Welcome to Be Customer Led, where we'll explore how leading experts in customer and employee experience are navigating organizations through their own journey to be customer led, and the actions and behaviors employees and businesses exhibit to get there. And now your host, Marbu Brown.
Thanks for joining us for another episode of Be Customer Led. We've got an exciting show planned for you as we explore how CX comes to life in the world of professional sports, and in particular, Major League Soccer. We're privileged to have as our guest today, Zach Riggar, who is the Vice President of Digital Marketing for Major League Soccer. Welcome to the show, Zach. We're excited to have you.
Thanks. I'm excited to be here.
Absolutely. So, Zach, we love to get the show started by giving our listeners a chance to get acquainted with guests by having them share the backstory of how they wound up in their roles today. And that's where we'd like to start with you. So why don't you tell us a little bit about your professional journey?
Absolutely. So I do have the privilege of serving as the Vice President of Digital Marketing at Major League Soccer. Been in this digital space for the last 15 years. Started out of school, designing things on the side, kind of tinkering around in early days of the internet, and eventually jumped into some big brands and have followed that path to where I am today. But as I said, always as a digital marketer, and I've watched this progression where we were a team off in the corner that was sort of charged with disrupting the marketing cycle. And now in 2024, really becoming the marketing cycle as we all carry around these mobile devices with us every single day. And I've had the privilege of doing so largely in sports. So I've worked on sports partnerships, sports media, content, digital marketing and experiences across multiple leagues in North America as well as abroad. Also worked at Nike and Jordan for a while, leading digital marketing, social media, and some paid media in different stops in that world. So always the red thread of digital, but I've had some really interesting stops along the way and watched this progression of how this industry has really grown from the early mid-2000s into where we are now.
Well, that's a very rich background, and I'm sure that as we delve into the topic today, people are going to, see how that comes to life in all these different pieces, right? So, hey, one of the exciting things that's happened lately is that YouGov did a study and found that Major League Soccer has surpassed the English Premier League and La Liga in popularity among Americans. What are some of the factors you think have contributed to this rise in popularity for the league?
It's an exciting time, that's for sure. And my hat goes off to all the people that have worked at Major League Soccer before me. I've been here for 2 years, right? So we've been on a really rocket ship journey over that time, but this has been about progressive growth. We like to say that Major League Soccer is a 29-year, soon to be 30-year-old startup as we move into our 2025-year season. But lately, it's felt like a really transformational period for the league, for the brand, and just for soccer in North America as we gear up for that World Cup in 2026. We've had some drivers of growth, right? We've got the most innovative technology partner in the world in Apple and how we're streaming our matches through things like MLS Season Pass. We've got Lionel Messi, who joined the league last season, fresh off a World Cup win with Argentina, actually won a Ballon d'Or while he was in MLS, which is awesome for us and just speaks to the caliber of player that he has. So we've got this tremendous momentum in the market. And I think all of those things have just made the brand more relevant and timely as we're looking at what's on the horizon now with this pending North American World Cup, but really building on that 29-year history and foundation that so many others have contributed to get us to this point.
Cool. So when you think about the notion of customer experience, it means something a little bit different when it comes to sports fans than it does, for customers of other businesses. And I'm curious, like when you think about trying to move the needle for MLS fans, what are some of the things that are different, or even some of the things that are seen that as other businesses that you have to keep in mind?
Yeah, I think sports is such an interesting space, right? And I have a background in some of those more traditional product cycles, like time at Nike selling shoes or digital products, or I was at Intel for a while and we're doing some B2C, B2B marketing in that space. Sports is so unique. The speed at which we move is so indirect compared to some of those more traditional funnels a company may run. You think of that sales cycle, right? You make a product, promote the product, sell the product, and it's very linear in that fashion. Whereas the decision making for a consumer in sports is so unlike that world. It's emotionally driven, it's indirect, it's really deep. And we have products we make people care about, but we're really appealing to emotions throughout. And it's an always on offense. So the similarities are that we all sort of target the same people, and we fight for relevancy in our different spaces. And that's something I really believe is apparent in 2025 and beyond. However, how we go to market and our means of which we connect with people is really always on, and it's so emotional that we've got to be relevant to different fans in different pockets to help drive that fandom conversion. And it is a very different cycle compared to some traditional industries.
Well, it's interesting because, when I just think of the whole notion of a fan, right? A lot of other businesses are trying to get their customers to become fans. And you're kind of already starting with people in this kind of a fan space. But I guess it's a little bit, different of a notion. And so it's like when you're thinking about what you have to do to keep them coming back, or what you have to do to keep them engaged, even if they're not, physically present, what are some of those kinds of things that you have to do?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a great question. And I think inherently we have a bit of an advantage just being in sports. We've got matches every single week, sometimes multiple times a week. Got an ever flow of content to stay top of mind and to be engaged with people. The challenge for us and for any sports organization is to continue to introduce yourself to new fans and to grow that pod. And you want to serve your core and keep them engaged and provide them with the right content, platforms, and offerings to keep coming back. But it's this balancing effect of where are we reaching out to be relevant and force growth in new mediums? Is that with new partners, or is it in different distribution platforms, or is it through new types of content, right? And leveraging some of the IP that we have that is that always on highlight driven sports marketing to go create fandom. And so balancing between the two is where we spend some time and we have to figure out. But it is inherently easier when we have that engine of content. Right? I've been at other brands where you're basically starting from scratch every single time. When you're starting a new marketing cycle, you're targeting a new consumer base, you're having to figure out what are they resonating with, and do we have the right type of offering for them? You're always creating things from that new. We at least know who we are in sports. So we've got a great library to pull from, which makes that setup a little bit easier for us.
Cool. So MLS is coming off a record-setting regular season in 2024. And so it's apparent that you've got engaged in a loyal fan base. In some parts of the country, even more so than others. I can think about some of the places where they go nuts, Columbus, Seattle, some of the places. By the way, both of those places are connected to me in one way or the other. Having gone to the Ohio State University and having lived in Seattle for a period of time. So I get that. But all fans are not created equal, right? So what's your team's approach to have some of the more casual fans become more avid fans, with the World Cup approaching in 2026?
Yeah, absolutely. That is priority number one for us, is growth. And so thinking about how do we maintain and service our core fans, but to your point, where are we going out and finding new fans to convert them into those core fans? And really for us, we want you to watch our sport. We want you to engage with our clubs. We want you to buy tickets or jerseys to go support those clubs. And those are the markers of a core fan. And so as we look to index with new people coming in, it's about meeting them in their path and being relevant against their very specific journey. I think our job as marketers is to identify where people are at within that path to fandom and provide contextual experiences and content to service fans and increase that strength of affinity, leading to real business value in the long term. And so we use different points of marketing to do that across the funnel through acquisition, retention, conversion. You'll see us indexing in places per funnel like social or with third-party content partners or in paid media to reach new fans. I'd love to bring them into our world and engage with them on our own and operated, continue to nurture and learn more about, have true data-driven engagement, eventually push them into those conversion metrics where we feel like you're going to be a core fan. The beauty of our sport and of our product offering is if you go to an MLS game, it's amazing. And the product is so good. And it's so energetic and it's so charged that if I can get you there, you're going to be a fan, right? And so the path to that point becomes really clear based on what affinity you're showing.
So do you have any favorite platforms where you see especially high engagement? Tell me a little bit about that.
Sure. So there are areas that we index across the funnel. When I think about new fans and perhaps some of our emphasis on growing with younger fans and a younger demographic, we look at TikTok, YouTube, Instagram as our primary three. We've got a brand deal with TikTok. They're great partners and we'll continue to service that partnership and help grow in that space. But remember, we have MLS Season Pass too. It's our streaming proposition on Apple TV. That in itself is a digital platform and it has all of our match play. It's got VOD content. It's got a whole bunch of really great stuff to help shape out the experiences of the league, of our clubs. And so we use that as a point of engagement because it's so important in our marketing mix of not only becoming a core fan, but also like working down the pipeline. And so really great to be able to service across the board and move people into these different experiences, but definitely want to end up in Season Pass.
Got it. Okay. So when you start, really thinking about, different things that you can do now, like you said, if you can get me out of game, the product's so great and everything like that I'm going to be a fan if you can get me to a game. But when you think about whether it's, in a game or using the season pass or, whichever platform you have people on, and you think about what can you do to elevate the fan experience? Are there any particular priorities that, the MLS is focusing on to elevate the fan experience and really, keep them highly engaged?
Yeah, we do a few things here, right? I think you go with me, there's a philosophical part of this conversation, and then there's also a very tactical business results oriented side of this conversation. And I think at a high level, we are hyper focused on growth in 2025 and beyond with that World Cup opportunity coming. Got an amazing product. We support them. If I can get you to a game, you're going to enjoy it. If you watch a game, you're generally going to enjoy it. But we also want to continue to invest and build our brand because the brand plays such an important part of making all of our marketing easier. It's the sharp point of what we want to offer in a space. And so as a marketing team at a league level, we're really there to create a relevant, interesting, inclusive brand as that first entry point to get into our world. Ultimately, fans are going to be fans of our clubs, of our players. They're not going to be fans of the crest in MLS, right? Maybe some of us that work in the office will wear that gear and move it around. But we've got to create that really exciting entry point. And that's sort of the ethereal part of this argument. It's the long-term bet and hedge that we make in the success of our marketing. As we move people through, we start to engage with them and perhaps even build our contactable audience base and collect their data and become more personalized and driven in how we're going to engage and move people to different CTAs. That's where I got to get you connected to a club. All right, your affinity is going to drive into the club and or player and try to elevate the fan experience by creating really interesting linkage points between those two, by servicing you with the right type of content that's really great and exciting, but also and maybe giving you the handoff into our clubs to be able to continue to service you with digital products or with on-site experiences or even just viewership and season pass. And I think if we can drive strength in that linkage, it also starts to help other elements of our business, right? Like we're seeing the increases in ticket sales, we're seeing the increases in subscribers, we're seeing the increase in partnership revenue. And it's all an important move for us as we drive that piece, but we've got to be relevant. We've got to be interesting. We've got to tell great stories, create great content, and then really highlight the players and the clubs that make up our league and make up so much of the culture of our brand to create more affinity with fans.
Yep. You talked about the whole notion that, like you got to get a person connected with a club. You got to get them connected to players. Right. And I wonder about that because all the franchises have their own owner, right? And so the owners, you don't necessarily want all the owners to do the same thing. I mean, they have to have their own creativity and the kinds of things that they do around, their own teams. But I mean, are there some, core principles and everything like that owners are encouraged to embrace or are held to or anything like that, help to drive the fan experience in a certain direction?
I think that's the power of the MLS brand, right? Like the way that we can position to say, this is what the brand stands for, this is what it means in the marketplace, and how it deals with fans. I think does shape our experiences with our clubs. But part of that is what makes the MLS so wonderful and unique is the clubs are also unique. And they have different personalities and different interests. And the way that they activate are really great, right? And that could be by different region or even, within rivalries. If I think about our teams here in the New York area, they're all a little bit different. And so you can kind of find your own flavor across the MLS of what you're interested in. And the clubs do an amazing job of bringing their own personalities to life. And we encourage that. I think it's an important part of what makes up the rich culture of our league. And you can see that in fun things like rituals and some of the tifos that go up in stadiums and just, their own separate brands that drive a lot of intrigue and excitement in their own right.
Okay, I was going to ask you, are there any franchises that kind of stand out in terms of the fan experience? But I'm not going to ask that question. I'm going to go to a different place there and think in terms of, are there any other leagues that are doing some really cool things from the perspective of their fan experience and stuff like that you think Major League Soccer could emulate?
Thank you for not asking me to choose a favorite club, because that's like choosing a child, which is always tough. Even though I've got a Portland Timbers scarf here, I really do support everybody. They're all great. Look, in terms of other leagues, we really do look across the full spectrum of sports and try to understand what other leagues are doing well. And there are really amazing stories to tell that those other counterparts in our space are doing. I think every league now is starting to work through this notion. How are you creating a walled garden of first party data? How are we starting to get into a space where we control the rules of engagement with our fans? And having been in this space for a long time, right, we used to spend a ton of money on social platforms, which, we still do. But from a media perspective, that's where we were primarily engaging, or we were looking at other mechanisms that aren't relevant anymore. And I think what we're all seeing in this evolving world of data privacy and changes is that you have to create a tighter linkage to your fans and be the ones that are controlling how that engagement flows through. To go fully invest in an outside platform is sort of like building a house on rented land, right? Like you don't control the rules. And so we see every league moving down that space and starting to emphasize things like personalization of loyalty and leveraging AI for automation, right? But it's all driven by this notion of just creating tighter, richer fan experiences based on first party. And I will say, even more broadly, like in our world of marketing, our competition is not just sports. It's everywhere that we're competing for mind share or wallet share with a potential fan. And so with that in mind, we really do look at the broader industry as well. And notably, Major League Soccer has gone through this evolution over the last couple of years where we've built out a really robust production studio that drives all of the broadcasts for MLS Season Pass and also creates features and VOD content. And that allows us to operate more like a media company. It's a great asset for us to have. And so oftentimes we're looking at what other media companies are doing in that content space to drive engagement, relevancy, and think about how we're all coming together in this connected world of devices that we carry around with us. So yes, we look at sports and there are some great learnings there, but I think to be relevant in 2024, 2025 and beyond, we have to look more broadly, act in ways that are going to be relevant for consumers worldwide.
Well, let me turn it around another way and say, when you think about MLS, maybe the broader sports world, what do you think what kind of lessons do you think other businesses could draw from you all that they could use to help, transform their customers from being casual consumers into being, avid fans?
I think we talked about this a little bit earlier. I think sports are aptly positioned to service fans in this way. It's the fact that we're always on. In a world where mind share is so hard to grab, we all have such limited attention spans and we're bombarded with content and advertising every day. A, your content has to be really good, and we strive for that continuously. But B, you've got to just take a lot of shots, right? Like you've got to be live all the time and try to be relevant and be in the path of a fan and a consumer. And sports inherently, because of our news cycles, because of how we have matches so frequently, allows us to do that. We are a content machine. We are creating highlights and new features and packs all of the time, or we're syndicating that across platforms with third-party partners. And I think that's a lesson that a lot of brands need to take away, particularly in our post-COVID lockdown world where we all got so tied into devices, into just content and new media consumption trends. Having a bit of that always on presence and being really robust in your content offering is something that I think is going to drive success for not only sports organizations, media organizations, and really anybody beyond that as you're looking to convert casual fans into more loyal fans or repeat customers.
Sounds very interesting. So let me ask you, is there any particular program or initiative that you all have kicked off that you feel has really made a strong connection with the fan base and really gotten them into deeper engagement?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I have to point first and foremost to MLS Season Pass on Apple TV, right? It is nearly globally available streaming proposition where all of our matches are available in one place with no blackouts at a single price. That is a brand new model in the world of sports. It has been traditionally broken up through regional sports networks or different cable deals or linear packages. We've consolidated into a digital first entity with one of the most innovative tech companies in the world. You can have every flavor of MLS through there. You could hop on and watch Seattle or Columbus or any other club as they roll through. You can learn more about those clubs by the content that's syndicated to that platform, or learn more about the players as we're creating player storytelling that lives in that space as well. That is first and foremost an engagement specific platform. And I think it's been an amazing revelation for us and for something we'll just continue to build on in the future with Apple as a partner.
Very cool. So one more thing I want to ask you about, because one of the things that has an impact on MLS is how the U.S. men's national team does. And of course, that's not necessarily something you all can control. But on the other hand, you're a feeder to some extent for the U.S. men's national team as well. And what's your take on how that all interacts with how the fans see the league, and how do you all make those connections and build on them?
Absolutely. I mean, we fully support and love our national team counterparts and really rooting for them strong in 2026. I think it's going to be an amazing opportunity for us all to just continue to solidify American soccer, and whatever we can do to support that, we're on board and we'll move through. And look, I mean, anytime we have MLS players representing their international clubs, whether that's in the US or Canada or otherwise, that's great for us. And we'll tell those stories and we'll highlight those players and celebrate them on the grand scale. You know, we have the most diverse makeup of nationalities represented in our league compared to any other league in the world. And that's a great place to be. And that was true in the last World Cup. It'll be in this one too. And so I think as much as we can do to just help stoke the flame of soccer fandom in the US and beyond, whether that's through MLS or the national teams or whatever, we're here to do it, because at the end of the day, if soccer grows, the MLS grows.
Cool. Well, you know, those are the main questions that I want to ask you. So as we come to wrapping up our conversation, I'm curious, you know, when you think about what this program's all about, and, you know, I'm going to have more guests, one of the things I like to ask guests is, what's the one question I should ask my next guest that you'd love to hear the answer to, and you think others would like to hear the answer to as well?
I really love that. I love that you do that, by the way. That's great. I think one thing that I'm constantly wrestling with in my brain here as we sit here in the end of 2024 is just, how are other marketers balancing across brand and performance marketing to drive long-term success? And I ask that because I think both are important, right? I've seen companies index on either side of the spectrum as if it's kind of a binary choice. But I think personally, investing in brand is that long-term hedge against changing consumer behavior and media costs and everything else we've sort of talked about to this point. It creates loyalty and connection and drives efficient marketing. But having growth and performance is important. It drives short-term business outcome and helps hold marketing teams to a bottom line. And I think that's great. I feel like the pendulum has swung so far down that space that we're almost over indexing as a industry at the moment in that world. And so I love to have this conversation with other marketers, other people in the space that have the opportunity to affect change. Is just what are you doing to balance between the short-term needs of growth and performance versus the long-term needs of brand?
Got it. One of the things I always like to tell people that when somebody engages with a business, the employees of that business, the people who represent that business, they are the brand. They are the commercial, right? And it's kind of interesting as you talk about how you balance those short-term needs and the long-term needs of the brand. It's kind of running through my head that, hey, all of these pieces are coming together and they become the brand to the consumer out there. Well, look, Zach, it's been a real pleasure having you join me for this discussion. I'm excited about what's going on in MLS. Excited to see that Americans are embracing MLS even more than English Premier League or La Liga. I look forward to you guys gaining more and more popularity, and it's just been a pleasure having you on, and thanks for coming.
Thanks so much. Pleasure was mine.
Thanks.
Thanks for listening to Be Customer Led with Marbu Brown. We are grateful to our audience for the gift of their time. Be sure to visit us at becustomerled.com for more episodes. Leave us feedback on how we're doing or tell us what you want to hear more about. Until next time, we're out.